Here's what's coming up on the world today. Fear and sleepless nights over the Taliban takeover caused citizens in countries around the world to take to the streets, demanding their rights to be preserved. The Afghan President Ashraf Ghani is in the UAE on humanitarian grounds. Plus, nearly 2,000 people killed in Haiti's earthquake. A warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shobowale here in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's kick things off with the protests slowly growing into a global movement against the Taliban in Afghanistan. First off, a group of women were seen holding signs and protesting for their rights on the streets of Kabul. Women and girls in Afghanistan are desperate not to lose their freedoms now that the Taliban are back in power. They say the Taliban should give a statement that all girls should be allowed to go to school without harassment from the Taliban. There were also protests in Jalalabad where Afghans holding Afghan flags condemned removing the national flag during Independence Day commemorations. The protests later turned deadly as at least 3 people were killed. We also gathered that gunshots were fired into the air near crowds of people outside the Kabul Airport. There's thousands, many of whom helped US-led foreign forces over 2 decades, are desperate to leave the country. Well, in addition to the protests, we're also learning of chaotic conditions outside Kabul Airport as European governments rush to bring home their citizens as well as Afghan colleagues. In recent hours, French, Dutch, German and Czech planes have all left Kabul. In recent, staff at the Dutch embassy were also taken by surprise by the Taliban arrival on Sunday. They did not tell their Afghan colleagues they were going. Local media reports that several people were wounded near the North Gate and that the Taliban are preventing people from getting to the airport. Well, the VOA's Aisha Tanzim is at Kabul Airport from where she joins us. Aisha, could you paint a picture of what is happening right now at the airport?
Yes, at the airport, what I'm hearing is lots of gunfire today. I mean, I've been here for 2 days now, and the gunfire was more sporadic on the first day. Today, throughout the day, a lot more gunfire, which I understand is a Taliban way of crowd control. So I don't have information on whether Taliban are trying to prevent the people from getting to the airport because they're trying to prevent them from leaving, or whether they're trying to prevent large crowds from gathering outside the airport, because remember, the reason why civilian flights were cancelled in the first place was because thousands of people gathered around the airport, hundreds of them breached the airport perimeter, ran onto the tarmac. Some of them tried to get onto the outside of aircraft that were trying to take off. At least several people got into a U.S. aircraft on the tire well and fell down, and died on the tarmac when the plane took off. So it wasn't safe for airplanes to land and take off, and all civilian flights were suspended. And now the airport needs to resume its activities. The perimeter is secured, from what I understand, and we are hoping that in 1 or 2 days, civilian flights would resume. But there are thousands of people outside. I've talked to some people and they said there are a lot of people outside who are just trying to get inside because they think once they're inside the airport, they have hope of getting out.
And speaking of getting out of the country, we find more countries are sending evacuation flights to the Kabul International Airport to pick up citizens and local support staff. Is there a process to determining who is allowed to get on board?
There are protests, not protests. There are processes. Different embassies have these, but a lot of people don't have the right documents. A lot of people are just desperate where if one person in the family has the right documents, they're trying to bring in other people in the family, younger brothers, children, other family members who may or may not fall under the category. So there's a lot of chaos right now here, and people are just hoping and thinking that if they can get inside the airport, they'll be able to get on an aircraft and go to another country, and once they get there, they will deal with whatever comes their way. Right now, it seems like just desperation to get out of the country, but yes, a lot of embassies are trying to process it in some kind of order, but the situation outside the airport is anything but orderly.
And Aisha, just before I let you go, we also know that some of the Taliban leaders have arrived in the country and are meeting. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, the Anas Haqqani, who's the son of Sirajuddin Haqqani, the head of Haqqani Network, met the Afghan political council that was set up to take over the country after Ashraf Ghani resigned. So Anas Haqqani, Taliban issued pictures of him meeting Dr. Abdullah, former President Hamid Karzai, and Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, the three members in the council, and some other political leaders. We're also hearing that Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, who headed the political office in Doha, has arrived in Kandahar and doing consultations there. He is expected in Kabul soon, in the coming days. We don't know exactly when that will be, but it seems like negotiations are ongoing between senior Taliban leadership and the senior political leadership left in Afghanistan after former President Ashraf Ghani, who is now in UAE, and many of his advisors and ministers left the country.
All right then, Aisha, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed, and do stay safe.
Thank you.
In the meantime, the Afghan ambassador to China, Javed Ahmed, says he's hopeful that the Taliban will form an all-inclusive government and uphold its commitments to respecting women's rights, while acknowledging there is a pressing need for humanitarian aid to reach some of the country's most vulnerable people. He shared his thoughts in a recent interview on the situation in his homeland. He offered his view on where it might be heading and what can be done to help the country become a more safe and secure place.
And I think during these 20 years also the objectives changed so many times. I heard even President Biden once mentioned that they could not do nation building in Afghanistan. I don't think he was supposed to, or anyone was supposed to do nation building. We are a nation. Yes, we're a nation of different ethnicities. So the focus should never have been on nation building. It is a nation to predict. You know, now things are changing by every hour. As of now, we're expecting that there will be a government established soon. That's now what is said, but nothing real happening, not like official anything. It's just the rumors around. What I hope is that they could establish the government faster, and a government that is inclusive, all the political fractions, all the ethnicities there, and then take care of the services for the people and the responsibility that they want to take forward.
Well, fleeing Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and his family are being granted asylum in the United Arab Emirates on humanitarian grounds. That's according to the Gulf States Foreign Ministry. Ghani fled the country just hours after the Taliban entered Kabul, reportedly with a helicopter full of cash. There had been rumors Mr. Ghani might have fled to Tajikistan. In a Facebook post addressed to Afghan citizens on Sunday, he had said he made the difficult decision to leave to avoid bloodshed in the capital city. He does face intense criticism from other Afghan politicians for leaving the country. Our Dubai correspondent, Mayowa Adegoke, joins us now for more on this. Mayowa, at this point, what more do we know about Ghani's arrival in the country, and what else has the UAE government said in the wake of the Taliban takeover?
Thank you very much, Tenny. Now, the announcement was made just a few hours ago that the UAE welcomed the former president to the country. Not much has been said after that. However, in the wake of the takeover by Taliban in Kabul, the government of UAE has confirmed that it is helping with evacuation efforts, evacuating diplomats from different countries. We saw that they did say that that happened Sunday, Monday. We suspect it might happen as soon as the airports get back into operation. But not much has been said so far, except that they are helping with evacuation efforts, as well as that the former president is here in the UAE.
But is there a sense, is the Emirates concerned by what's happening in Afghanistan?
I mean, it has to be, right? So in a comment, in a statement that they put out on Monday, they were saying that they expressed hope for security and stability in the country. But it's interesting that they use the word broadly Afghanistan. So that's how they describe the country, Afghanistan. Definitely the UAE has been looking to take on more leadership roles in the region and definitely in the Arab world generally. So this just might pose a leadership challenge or opportunity for them, depending on how the situation swings. But definitely the government has said they're keeping their eyes on the situation and they're hoping for security and stability in the country.
And just finally, Mayo, before I let you go, as evacuations continue, has the UAE government announced plans to take in refugees?
There have been no announcements in that light either. Of course, this is still a developing situation. We expect that in the next couple of hours or days, the government would speak more about how involved it will be in the whole situation, but we'll keep our eyes peeled to see what they say. However, Pakistan, the Pakistani government, has announced that it is giving visa on arrival to diplomats, journalists, and foreigners. So I expect that the UAE might make an announcement because the whole world will have its eyes on the UAE as well, who's been looking to play more leadership roles in the Arab world. So we expect that they would make a comment. If they would talk about that, we would find out.
All right, then, Mayowa, thanks so much for the update.
Thank you.
Well, still to come on the program. We'll have more on the Afghan conflict, plus art lovers flock to watch Master Antonio Lopez paint in central Madrid. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Still on the Afghan conflict, over in the UK, MPs have been debating the unfolding crisis during an emergency sitting of Parliament. Facing criticism over the government's handling, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it's an illusion to believe that the UK alone could have prevented the collapse of Afghanistan after the US withdrawal. He adds that Taliban would be judged on their actions, not their words, after they sought to convince the world they would not seek revenge. Meanwhile, the government has outlined plans for up to 20,000 refugees from Afghanistan to be resettled in the UK. Under the scheme, up to 5,000 will come in the first year, with the priority for the most vulnerable under the country's new Taliban rulers.
I think it would be fair to say that the events in Afghanistan have unfolded and the collapse has been faster than I think even the Taliban themselves predicted. What is not true is to say that the UK government was unprepared or did not foresee this, because it was certainly part of our planning of pitting the very difficult logistical operation for the withdrawal of UK nationals has been under preparation for many months, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell the House that the decision to commission the emergency handling centre at the airport, the commissioning of that centre, took place 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker. Alongside this core mission, we worked for a better future for the people of Afghanistan, and the heroism and tireless work of our armed forces contributed to national elections, as well as the promotion and protection of human rights and equalities in a way that many in Afghanistan had not previously known. Whereas 20 years ago almost no girls went to school and women were banned from positions of governance, now 3.6 million girls have been in school this year alone, and women hold over a quarter of the seats in the Afghan parliament. But Mr. Speaker, we must be honest and accept that huge difficulties were encountered at each turn, and some of this progress is fragile. I will give way to the honourable gentleman.
I thank the Prime Minister for giving.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, accuses the Prime Minister of staggering complacency and betraying the Afghan people. He says Prime Minister Johnson's judgment on Afghanistan had been appalling.
And the Prime Minister bears a heavy responsibility. Mr. Speaker, he mutters today. He was in a position to lead, but he didn't. Britain holds a seat at the United Nations Security Council. We're a key player within NATO. We're chair of the G7. Every one of these platforms could and should have been used to prepare for the withdrawal of forces, to rally international support behind a plan to stabilise Afghanistan through the process and keep us safe. I will give way in just a minute. But what did Mr. Speaker, did the Prime Minister use those platforms in those 18 months to prepare? No, he didn't. What did he do? What did he do instead? We debated this. He cut the development budget.
The UK Prime Minister also faced criticism from his own party MPs, including former Prime Minister Theresa May, who said it was incomprehensible that the UK and NATO did not do more for Afghanistan. The former Prime Minister asked how Britain could have miscalculated the strength of the Taliban, which took Kabul on Sunday, August 15, in a rapid offensive.
But the withdrawal, when it came, was due to be orderly, planned, and on the basis of conditions. It has been none of these. What has been most shocking has been the chaos and the speed of the takeover by the Taliban. In July of this year, both President Biden and my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, indicated that they did not think that the Taliban was ready or able to take over control of the country. Was our intelligence really so poor? Was our understanding of the Afghan government so weak? Was our knowledge of the position on the ground so inadequate? Or did we really believe this? Or did we just feel that we had to follow the United States and hope that on a wing and a prayer it would be all right on the night? Because the reality is, if I may just make this point, the reality is that as long as a time limit was given and dates were given for withdrawal, All the Taliban had to do was to ensure there were sufficient problems for the Afghan government not to be able to have full control of the country, and then just sit and wait.
Let's take a look at the COVID-19 situation around the world now. Here's the COVID-19 global update, beginning with the World Health Organization calling to hold booster jabs around the world. As countries around the world announce plans to begin giving COVID-19 booster jabs, the World Health Organization says current data does not indicate that COVID-19 booster shots are needed.
Yes, there is enough vaccine. As of today, 4.7 billion doses of vaccine have been administered around the world. That will soon pass the 5 billion mark. So yes, there is enough vaccine around the world. However, it's not going to the right places in the right order to save as many lives, prevent as much severe disease as possible. And until that happens, it's difficult to understand the position that there is enough vaccine going to the places that need it.
Meanwhile, the Chinese mainland has administered over 1.88 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines as it further ramps up the mass inoculation drive covering wider age groups. The country has extended the scope of vaccination to people aged under 18, following the authorization by the health authorities in June of the emergency use of domestic inactivated vaccines among people aged 3 to 17. As Australia's largest city, Sydney, continues to break records for new daily infections, despite a nearly 2-month lockdown, authorities say the Delta outbreak has not peaked and residents must brace for more deaths.
Unfortunately, we had a huge increase in the number of cases of community transmission to 8 p.m. last night. There were 633 cases of community transmission, and at this stage there are at least 62 of those that were infectious in the community during that time.
Australia is in the grip of a third wave of infections that has exposed weaknesses in the country's vaccine rollout and forced more than half of its 25 million people into lockdown. And in neighbouring New Zealand, 2 new cases of coronavirus have been reported over the past 24 hours, taking the total number of infections to 7 in the latest outbreak. The cases have been linked to the outbreak in New South Wales, Australia.
The results that have come back from our case yesterday tell us 2 things. First, that we are dealing with the Delta variant. The second thing it tells us is that it is linked the current genome sequencing of cases in the New South Wales outbreak. Our case has originated in Australia.
And finally, Pope Francis has issued an appeal urging people to get inoculated against COVID-19, saying the vaccines could bring an end to the pandemic, but it needs to be taken by everyone. Pope Francis was himself vaccinated in March, saying at the time that it was an ethical obligation. At least 1,941 people are known to have died in Haiti in Saturday's powerful earthquake, a rise of more than 500 on the previous figure. Rescue workers have managed to pull 34 people alive from the rubble, but many are still missing after the 7.2 magnitude quake. The search for survivors has been hampered by heavy rains brought this week by Tropical Storm Grace. As we end the program today, it's not often you get the chance to see a master at work, but Madrid residents have recently been able to watch one of Spain's greatest living artists set up his studio under the blazing sun on the famous Puerta del Sol Square. Every day from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. since the start of July, painter and sculptor Antonio Lopez has positioned his large easel on canvas and begun mixing his paint as a crowd of excited shoppers, dog walkers and art lovers assembles around him. The 85-year-old is renowned for his lifelike depictions of everyday subjects, from city scenes to portraits. Lucky them. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Bye for now.